So, right, welcome to the class. Recording function is now on. Later today, this will be edited. Well, not edited. I don't edit the lecture. That takes too much techno savvy. But we are recording now. The lecture will be uploaded to the loop page as an audio and video recording later. But today we are looking at the idea of, not the idea, but the concept of nuisance under tort law. Again, just for anyone watching at home or anyone watching at a later date, I will be taking questions from the class as they come in the chat function. If you wonder why I'm stopping, that's why. So when we're looking at nuisance, you can see there's looking at the idea of nuisance, there's two types we look at. There's private nuisance and public nuisance. Today we're mostly going to be looking at public nuisance, but it is important to know what private nuisance is. And you can see there, a private nuisance is in essence defined as unreasonable interference with another person in the exercise of his or her rights generally associated with the occupation of property. And that might seem a bit familiar as a topic to some people, because I kind of rephrase that as one of the questions put up for the assessment for this module. You have to talk about, you have to just talk about the rights to enjoy your land and the benefit that you can enjoy from it compared to the enjoyment of your the rights of another's land. So the nuisance you can create by enjoying your own property versus the rights someone else is entitled to on their property to be free from your nuisance. And we'll be looking at this a little bit later, but just as an overview, it's noise, pollution, general interference with your property or restrictions on how your property can interfere with the other. So the nuisance of cutting off light or privacy will be stuff we'll be looking at. But you can see there, whether the nuisance is public or private, the remedies are generally damages or an injunction or both. So if it can be prevented, an injunction; if it caused harm, damages, or possibly it can be both, to stop the nuisance from occurring again if it's a reoccurring thing. So you can see there that the brief overview of Connolly versus South of Ireland Asphalt Company. It does give a good definition of what nuisance is. The actual nuisance is incapable of an exact definition. The term nuisance contemplates an act or omission which counts to an unreasonable interference with a disturbance of or annoyance to another person in the exercise of his rights. If the rights so interfere but belong to the person as a member of the public, the act or omission is a public nuisance. If these rights relate to the ownership or occupation of land or of some easement, profit, or other right enjoyed in connection with that land, then the acts or omissions amount to private nuisance. And this is an important distinction, just where we draw the line between public and private. And we'll be looking at private nuisance later. And you can see there that easement, profit, or other right enjoyed in connection to the land. We'll be looking at how you have certain rights in relation to land and how these can be affected. So as I said, the right to sit in your garden and not hear your neighbor blasting really shitty dubstep. If you still listen to dubstep or whatever the latest young people music is, I know I'm old. Music stopped for me in the 60s. The day Buddy Holly died, music went. But it is that question: your right to enjoy your land and your property without being interfered with by the rights of another. So while they are legally exercising their own rights, it is having a detrimental effect on yours. Or it could be an effect on the public at large. So you look at who is being affected. And we're going to be looking at public rights now, and public nuisance. A public nuisance is a crime. And again, it's quite difficult to give a precise definition of what a public nuisance is, as it covers a multitude of sins, great and small. And this can go from a mild annoyance of harm to a significant disturbance or nuisance, as we would use it in everyday language. And you can see there, the essence of the crime there is to injure the reasonable comfort and convenience of the public or a section of the public. And this is where public nuisance gets interesting, of who is the public and how is it affecting them? How does it affect them? Is it just something that's there? Does it have to affect the public at large? So all of Ireland has to be affected, or can it be if it's noise coming from let's say it's a concert being held in Croke Park. The nuisance could be the crowd, it could be the noise, it could be the litter, it could be the general disturbance of reasonable comfort and convenience of the public or a sector of the public who live around the Croke Park area every time there's a concert on. And this is one of the grounds that they were complaining about when the Gareth Brooks series of concerts were going to be held. It would be a nuisance, it would be disruptive for 8 nights straight. And they had an agreement with Croke Park that they wouldn't hold so many concerts. Also, as I said, music died in the 60s. Gareth Brooks is pretty shit. Just opinion, not legal fact, but feel free to disagree in the comments. I'm realizing I'm going a bit more YouTube sensationalist or East celebrity as these lectures go on, but rate, subscribe, and comment. Now, the point is to have fun with these lectures, or for me to have fun with these lectures. You are listening, and I'm assuming you're having fun because no one has complained yet. So the essence there is the comfort and convenience, but what would be comfortable and convenience for some may be different for others. So there is no real set definition, but there's a workable term of what public nuisance is. And this is a friend of mine. He is a classified public nuisance. I told him I'd include in the lecture, but just a flat out public nuisance to the public. But with public nuisance, though, only the Attorney General can take the civil proceedings to bring a claim of public nuisance against the defendant. And this is to avoid multiple proceedings being taken for the same matter. So if there's a significant issue going on, if there's a significant nuisance, say my friend, only the Attorney General can take the action against him as a public nuisance. The flip side of that is, while it also prevents multiple cases being put forth to free up the court, it does offer some benefit to the defendant, as they are not subject to these multiple cases, that they are not defending themselves on the same thing over and over, which can be costly and time-consuming. So if there's a public nuisance, the Attorney General will take the claim. But the individual can still suffer from this public nuisance. And there can be the personal element or the personal aspect of public nuisance, where the person has suffered a particular or special damages over and above that suffered by other members of the public. They can also then take the action for the same nuisance. And this is separate to the one taken by the Attorney General. So if you are an individual who has suffered greatly, I sound like one of those ads, if you've used these products, you may be entitled to compensation. I'm not one of those ads. I'm not one of those ads. But it is a question of, if you can show you have suffered as an individual beyond the standard suffering of the public from this nuisance, you will be able to take the action, because there can be a particular or special circumstances. And we're going to be looking at this as and what these actually are. And again, with the particular or special damages, they are kind of undefined. There's some uncertainty relating to them, because of just how broad nuisance can be, but also how broad the particular and the special damages you have suffered can be. And you can see there's two views. The first one is the requirement as being different kind. You are suffering a different type of damage from the nuisance from the general public. It's as if they are say if there's a concert on in Croke Park, and the general public nuisance is the litter and the crowd. If you suffered because your house was right beside the Croke Park Stadium and AC/DC were playing, you suffered damages from the vibrations because they have very loud amps, and no one else suffered that. That's one aspect of it, or one viewpoint of it. The other and more popular one is it's more serious. Sorry, I'm just going to mute people. Where? How do I mute everyone again? All right, we're good. Sorry. So, yeah, so as I was saying, there is the more common and applied case, I'm tripping this, is that you have suffered beyond the normal level of suffering the public at large have for the damage. So it really is just the requirement for the particular or the special damages is that they affect the individual specifically and at a higher level than just they're a member of the public or a member of the section of the public. My hands are getting large because for some reason, Dell decided to put the webcam at the bottom of the screen, and it makes it really unruly when you try to type and you're on a video chat. But that's what we're looking at. And with the damages to the individual, the most obvious type of damage to the individual is damage to their person or their property, but also in relation to the loss of opportunity to earn a livelihood. And you can see there in the Boyd versus Great Northern Railway case, a doctor was delayed by 20 minutes and at a street level crossing due to the actions of the defendant and his employees. And because of this, he missed a meeting with his patient, and because of this nuisance, because of the blockage on the road at the level crossing, he missed his appointment and he missed 10 shillings he would have been entitled to charge a patient for. So he sued for the 10 shillings and was awarded the 10 shillings. And you can see there, a doctor whose time was of pecuniary value was held to have suffered some appreciable damage peculiar to himself beyond that was suffered by other members of the public ordinarily using that highway. So other people were also delayed. But because the doctor was delayed in relation to meeting his patient, he had suffered beyond the norm of society, of anyone who else was just delayed. And it was a particular or special damage, in this case, 10 shillings. And that was I'm tumbling up slides on this, I'll fix these. But in the case of Smith versus Wilson, the plaintiff, an elderly farmer, he frequently walked to the market in the Ballymena area on a public road, was subject to nuisance as the road was obstructed by the removal of a bridge by the defendant and a fence was created in certain areas. As a result, this took him longer to get to the market, and it often required him to drive, increasing the cost of travel and just generally increased the cost. So you can see there, the King's Bench division, so this was a UK case, held he was entitled to damages. And you can see there, I think that there is some evidence of which a jury might find the plaintiff had sustained peculiar, direct, and substantial damage in farm business and expenses. So the cost of selling this product at market went up. No doubt the case is not as strong as if a carriage road had been stopped, but there is still some distinctive injury. So of course we're acknowledging this isn't the strongest one. And I think the fact he was an elderly farmer on a small farm was a part of this. If they were a large farmer dealing with a significant commercial scale of farming and produce, I don't know if the courts would have went this way. But you can see there, it may be said that the plaintiff can sue every other farmer in the neighbourhood who used the pass may be able to do the same. This may be so, but every nuisance which affects large sections of the community, e.g. nuisance from chemical works or smallpox hospitals, kind of showing how old this case is, or from the collection of explosives, is open to the same remark. Everyone who individually sustains particular damages can apply for, particular injury can apply for damages or injunctions. And in this case, it was just a farmer who did so. But it is an interesting case and just showing, the courts were saying this isn't the strongest application, but there was still a particular or special damage suffered by the elderly farmer because of his increased costs. So look at how that works. And a person who suffers a special, this is where we're looking at the other day of how Rylands v. Fletcher can be subsumed into different areas of the court. And they're kind of looking at how this relates for nuisance. The person who suffers damages in relation to personal injury might have a right under action to sue for negligence. Might have a right to sue on nuisance as a result that while they still have suffered a personal injury, it may be more difficult for that personal injury to bring a claim under negligence. And if they can show the public nuisance caused by the defendant's negligence, they can bring that case forward under negligence. But sometimes they may be prevented by doing so under negligence, or the defendant might not have been negligent, but it still caused harm. So they have the option of nuisance. And it does open up quite a bit. It does open up quite a little bit of risk when doing so. And this is something they were looking at in relation to questions of the environment, because the special injury must be shown it can work to blunt the special injury requirement can blunt the edge of public nuisance being used as a weapon by environmentalists to counter pollution. And this is how they're looking at it, that you have to show, you can't use it, it's really just showing that how the edges of public nuisance can be restricted, so not every single engagement and not every single action by, say, a chemical company causing harm to the environment will be a public nuisance, or will be a public nuisance, but you can't take a individual action against it because you lack this particular special damages, that while it damages your air, while it damages the air of the world, while it damages the waters, these are public goods, public utilities. So only the Attorney General can take these cases. If you can show that if you live in the region around, say, a chemical plant, and the escape of, shouldn't use escape because that'll be the two cluster islands and Fletcher rules, but if a chemical plant is pumping out smoke, and smoke is affecting your air quality, or it's damaging your white sheets when you put them out, as just examples off the top of my head, you would have the particular or special damages that they're causing you harm beyond the general damage to the public. And that's what they were looking at there. You would have a strong case there. So with the type of nuisance, as we kind of look at it, there is a near infinite scope for nuisance of what can be a nuisance. If you think about how the word is used in the everyday language, it's just something it's annoyance, it's an obstacle in your way. But some of these will have legal aspect of nuisance associated with them. And they can include such diverse wrongs as exposing in public streets a person suffering from an infectious disease. I thought that was a little bit topical at the moment. You would have some other cases, and I'm not saying you can punch someone. As a lecturer, I really can't advocate that. But at the moment, with everything going on, if someone intentionally coughs on you with the purpose of getting you sick, I don't know if the guards would turn a blind eye. No, I'm joking about that. But don't cough on people in public. But another example is holding a pop concert, which generates an excessive degree of noise and traffic congestion. So this traffic could either be the traffic going to the concert or the traffic of people in the surrounding area. And these are quite extreme examples, but they do happen. And the first one may be happening more. Excuse me. And one of the most common types of public nuisance is obstruction on highways. And again, as we've seen in other lectures, highways are just how legally they say road. So these could be minor roads, bypasses, motorways, whatever. And you can see there that in Cunningham versus McCarthy, generally any obstruction on any obstruction of a public highway is a public nuisance. But this is not a universal rule. There will be exceptions, but generally, if you're causing problems on a motorway, if you're causing problems on a road, if you block it up, it will be a public nuisance. And McKenna versus Stevens and Alexander Holko, it's quite clear that every obstruction of the roadway does not create a cause of action in a personal injury, in a person injured or an inconvenience thereby. So while they will count as an obstruction, you might not suffer from it. It might just be the cost of using the road, that other people are entitled to use the public roadway. For anyone who lives outside of Dublin, particularly in more rural Ireland, you may have seen where local farmers are bringing their herds of cows, sheep, goats, whatever, from one field to another. They may have to go across a public road, they may have to bring them down the road. And the question is that a nuisance? And in the everyday use of the word, yes, it is a nuisance because it's time consuming, you can be waiting there for ages, it can smell, but that in itself may not constitute an actionable instance of negligence or nuisance. of nuisance because they have the entitlement to use that road the same as you do. It is a public utility, it's a public highway, and they are using it in accordance with their need. You are using it in accordance with your need. And this is where you draw the line of when does it actually become an actionable nuisance? Is it, for say, the farmers taking so long with their livestock, they're taking it across, they stop for lunch, they leave them out on the road? That would be a nuisance and subject to another few areas of tort. But if they're just bringing it down the road as quickly and safely as they can, that's an inconvenience. It's a nuisance in the everyday sense of the word because you may be delayed, but you won't be allowed to bring an action against them. The same thing for cyclists. And as we've seen in lectures, I hate cyclists. I would consider them a nuisance, but it wouldn't be an actionable nuisance because they haven't, and this pains me to say, they have entitlement to use the road as much as I do as a driver. Now, the nuisance is if the cyclists are blocking the road, if they're having a, oh, sorry, so one question. They would be able to sue. Sorry, I realized I read a question and never said what it was. Someone asked, in reference to type of nuisance and exposing public streets, a person suffering from an infectious disease. So someone shouting if they had the coronavirus and spat in someone's face and they both tested positive, could they sue for damages? Yes, you could sue for damages under a number of headings. You could sue for damages under, we will look at this because we have more time, of trespass to the person, of pretty much various forms of assault at a civil level, of if you've been assaulted, and this intentional spreading of illness, infectious disease would fall within this. The nuisance would be the, if you were there, if you were avoiding the scene, if you were incapacitated or delayed by this altercation, you'd be able to take would be able to take a claim for nuisance that they delayed you, they caused you an inconvenience, is the word I was looking for. Also, you'd be able to sue for damages under a number of headings of loss of earning, loss of mental wellness. I'm sorry, that's a bad way to describe it, but you may be able to, depending on your broader circumstances, you may be able to put in for psychological damages if you are on if you were an at-risk individual, or if you were living with at-risk individuals, the stress of that can contribute to damages. There would be a few grounds to sue in relation to someone intentionally spitting on you and causing harm. You would be able to sue under a number of grounds in tort law. They would also be arrested. They would also be tried as a criminal matter because it is, particularly with infectious diseases, there's a very low tolerance for individuals being allowed to intentionally and actively spread them. And what can be done? We'll look at this because another student emailed me about it, and it was an interesting area in the notes I have. You would have a lot of grounds to sue under tort, in particular for that circumstances. Don't rely on that as legal advice. If you are, that's just a general understanding of legal principles. If you are unfortunate in a circumstance where that has happened to you, I would recommend going to legal advice or communicating with someone who can give you proper legal advice. I just want to put that as a qualifier. Also, again, guys might turn a blind eye to you if, they're intentionally spitting on you and they have coronavirus, because there was that case recently where an individual was doing that with guards, and 2 guards are now out of commission for 14 weeks, and the personal circumstances and personal hardship they will have to endure for the 2 weeks isolation. So, yeah, does that answer your question? No, I kind of ramble around this, but yeah, you would be able to there would be a type of nuisance as a result of their action, among many other types of tort that you would be able to sue for damages. That if you can't show the nuisance was a significant damage, there would be injury to the person anyway, and you would have some grounds. But it is an interesting one. And just when I was reading the notes, they had that, and I thought it was a bit timely. Yeah, cool. So with nuisance, a wide range of nuisance and annoyances can fall under a nuisance as an everyday nuisance, but legally they will not give rise to it. And you can see there in Herring versus Metropolitan Board of Works, examples of an annoyance and a nuisance to you in a personal sense or the public sense being a nuisance as an everyday nuisance rather than a legal nuisance. And just some examples there. Cart and wagons stopping on a door for the purpose of loading and unloading. It's a coal chutes opened. Just general business, effectively. They're quite old examples, but they are causing a nuisance and a delay and annoyance, but not enough to give rise to a legal nuisance. Just be aware of that distinction. And just kind of how some legal terms have entered everyday language, that while they do have a specific legal meaning, it can differ from how we would use it now. So these are some examples of nuisance and obstructions. And each of these are actually cases that have been taken. Going forward, you can see there a ladder being left on leaving a ladder for an unreasonable period on a public footpath, while you as the individual of the property would be entitled to use the ladder to repair your property as you need. Leaving it there for an unreasonable amount of time, it could be a nuisance in the sense of it's causing obstruction. People may physically not be able to get by it, but also people may not want to walk under a ladder. If people are superstitious, some people are a little superstitious at the varying degrees, but it can constitute an obstacle. And what is an unreasonable time will depend on the context. Is it ongoing work? Is it 20 minutes? Or did they stop for lunch and it was more difficult to take down the scaffold, the ladder for the lunch break and to reassemble it, but they left out warnings, they left out notifications or signs saying there's a ladder, just be careful. Digging a trench in the motorway, digging a fucking road. If you dig a hole in the road, you will be treated as an obstacle. You will also be treated as an idiot because you shouldn't be digging holes in roads. Leaving the vehicle on a highway for an unreasonable time. So again, an abandoned vehicle, it can cause a nuisance. Whether this, anyone who drives, and hopefully you're having a situation where your car is broken down, if you pull your car over to the side of the road, you try to repair it, put petrol back in because you realize you ran out, or you call for accident emergency or whatever recovery you can. That's fine. You were leaving your car there. It is causing an obstacle. It is, but it won't be a nuisance. If you leave it there for an unreasonable time, if you decide, you know what, it's Friday at 5, I'll deal with this Monday. That's an unreasonable amount of time. If your car is parked in the middle of the road, if your car is parked in, say if it breaks down in the middle lane on a 3-lane motorway and you leave it there overnight because you just decide not to deal with it, that's unreasonable. If you leave it there for 20 minutes or the hour it takes for emergencies to come out, that would be okay. Leaving railway gates closed longer than necessary. This is where, if anyone lives near train lines, the railway gates onto roads. So the railway gates are closed, let's say a train is coming, do not drive through this. If they're left down for long periods of time, you can't drive through them. Well, you can, but you really, really shouldn't. You'll damage your car and cause a lot of harm and get caught. But if they're left down for 10 minutes after a train passes, they're put down 10 minutes before the train passes, that's an unreasonable amount of time. If they're left for a minute before and after the train departing, that can be okay because there can be a risk or there can be a second train coming, and it's to ensure everything is done correctly. Allowing pickets or queues to form as to obstruct the passage of roadways, road users or pedestrians or access to customers to a shop. An unrealistic level or an unreasonable level of queuing. If you have multiple shop fronts in a row, staging the queue that it covers up access to another shop would be a nuisance. It would be an obstruction. But if you have a particularly successful business or you are expecting a queue. So the ones I can think of for picketers and queues is Ticketmaster Friday mornings when the concerts are going to go on sale. You've got a 5-minute window at the best to get tickets for most times. Ticketmaster and their retail outlets, their agents, will position the queue in a particular manner so it doesn't cause obstruction to other road users or pedestrians or wherever they are. Or at the moment, if anyone goes to supermarkets, the way they have the entry staggered for access as a result of precautions, where they have those lines ahead are placed, you aren't blocking access to people using other shop fronts. While they might be closed, they still are staggered and positioned in a way that doesn't cause a restriction. Building a structure which obstructs a road or highway or navigatable river. Don't build walls on a fucking road. Don't build dams. We're not beavers. These will be nuisances. These will be obstructions and they will cause damage. If you build them in incorrect places and incorrectly, there's going to be a whole heap of other torts available and damages you'll be paying. But don't building a structure which obstructs a river or navigatable a road or navigatable river. A navigatable river will just be one that can use traffic. If it's a small stream at the back of a field, it might be all right if you need it, but you may be subject then to other areas of tort. Or allowing a mass of animals to obstruct the highway. This again goes back to the public road example I said, where farmers are bringing their cattle, their livestock from one field to another. If they're in the process of bringing them from a field to another field or from the field to their farm, that is their use of the highway. It's not, while it's an obstruction, it's not an everyday nuisance. It's not a legal nuisance because they're doing it in the correct amount of time. They are creating an inconvenience, but it's their use of the road. If cyclists decide to have a mass cycle race on a road with no warning, no notification, taking up a quarter mile, half mile, 3 miles block of a road, that will be a nuisance and it will be beyond their reasonable use on their entitlement of the road. And I say that as an example because I was in that situation where there was an impromptu cycling rally. They took up a quarter mile, half mile stretch of a road, with a back road, to the point it was causing an everyday nuisance. But I was driving to lectures and meetings, and I was nearly late, and I could have had an action for nuisance for any loss of earning if I was fired because I was late. I wasn't late because I'm in my office now as a professional. This is a screen grab. Well, that's a photo I took, and it's my background. But it is the question of when does an everyday nuisance become a legal nuisance, and what is the reasonable balance of your enjoyment of a right with the other. So in a public highway, you have the right to use the road, and they have the right to use the road. And I say they as the obstacle, as creator or controller of an obstacle, that they can use it for a legitimate purpose, so can you. But if you're using it for illegitimate purposes or unlawful purposes that they aren't entitled to, if Vin Diesel and Paul Walker are blocking off a road to have their street race, and I use that because I was watching the Fast and Furious movies the other night. They're fantastic movies, and one of the really annoying things about the whole shutdown at the moment is they've delayed Fast and Furious 10, which really should be called Fast 10 Your Seatbelts. Yeah, I'm used to silence on that one. But that would be an unlawful use. Illegal use of public highway will be a nuisance, and you can take the action in that regard. Another type of nuisance then is the creation of danger. So staging a public street racing event would be creating a danger. And you can see there's a nice little bridge. Hassan versus O'Loughlin. Nuisance is not confined to an obstruction on the highway. It may consist of anything which makes use of the highway unsafe or dangerous to the public. So street racing, dangerous and unsafe to the public. Cyclists, in mass, I would say they are dangerous and unsafe to the public. A person on a bike, not a problem. Few people on bikes, not a problem. Groups of cyclists, public menace. And you can see there's an example. The defendant was liable where he'd placed tiny heaps of stones on a highway. So he put small stones on a highway, which you might be thinking, small stones, not really a risk, but stones can be dangerous. But it still was making the highway unsafe to a degree and a danger to the public. These stones, maybe not the affinity stones, could cause reduction in traction on your car. They could, if you drive over them, they could split up and they could hit a surrounding car or surrounding window or surrounding person, depending on the type of road. And it is that kind of danger that is being created. That if there is a level of danger that can be shown or making the road unsafe, that can be a nuisance and it can be an actionable nuisance. And this, again, some more examples here. These be two slides of this. These, again, are all cases where there was held to be a nuisance and damages could be recovered. And leaving an unauthorized no parking notice on a footpath causes harm. Failing to remove a disused gas pipe projecting from the soil of a property close to the footpath. It's a pipe. It's causing harm. You could trip over it. You're creating some unsafe existence on the path by its proximity, damaging the road surfacing or rendering it hazardous. If you're digging in a trench, if you're putting marbles on the road, as an example, or putting ice or putting water out on a bend with the hopes of freezing to make a black ice situation. Putting oil on the road. Anything the wacky racers would do would be creating a hazard of dangerous materials on or near the highway. Holding unauthorized motorcycle speed trials on an unsuitable road. So again, street racing, completely illegal. Movies make it look great fun, but yeah, no, they're movies. These are creating unsafe hazards on a public road, and it can cause harm to the public. Camping on the roadside and an unserviced site, thereby causing a rat infestation, litter, and a traffic hazard. That one is very specific to the case it was in, but it was that specific. I thought it was interesting. It was really to show how far this danger can go, because a rat infestation can be dangerous. We're living in a time of plagues. We had the plague created in the 1600s. No, the Great Plague, the Black Plague, was attributed to the spread of rats in Europe as really a result of the fleas and the rats. But as a result of that plague, Shakespeare was locked in his house and he wrote King Lear. We have the advantage of being locked in our houses. We have the script for King Lear, so we can just copy and paste it. And because it's before 1928, it's in public domain, so you don't need to cite it. I've written King Lear 40 times. I'm trying to move on to the next one. And I'm also trying to rewrite Shakespeare because there's only so many times you can write them. It's now Romeo and Juliet. Instead of Romeo and Juliet, it's Romeo v. Juliet. I have a few other ones I can workshop, but they're not that important. You can see there the other example of maintaining a golf course in a manner designed so that players are likely to slice the ball onto the highway. In golf, this just means messing up the shot. It's where the nuisance could be creating a danger if it's likely the players are going to hit their balls off the golf course, off the golf property, onto the road. Projecting a stone step and metal scrapper onto a highway. Aiming the scrapper and it's projecting out to the highway, so what you put in or the shredder will go out onto the road, or could go out onto the road. Letting a wall adjoining a highway fall on top of it. There would be negligence as well, but there would be nuisance of the harm and the delays, depending on the severity and size of the wall on the cleanup. And reconstructing the side portion of a highway in a dangerous manner could be a type of nuisance. Depending who is reconstructing it, it could be take case of negligence as well, and it could be a state body or a public contractor, and we look at where they draw the line between the two. So that's the end of the slides for today. It was a good breaking point before we move on to some of the defenses. And I'm going to stop screen share. Some of the defenses and some of the aspects for private nuisance we'll be looking at on Friday. But I'm going to stop recording now.